Hey, what's going on everybody? It's ETAPRIME back here again, and today we're going to be taking a look at a really powerful gaming laptop. Actually, it's the most powerful laptop that I've ever been able to feature on the channel. And for the past week, I've been using this as my main PC. This has more than enough power to replace my desktop PC, and overall this thing has been an absolute beast when it comes to work and play. It's handled everything that I've thrown at it without any issues. So what we have here is the Asus ROG Strix G17 G713QR. It's definitely a mouthful, but we have a 1440p 17.3 inch display, an 8-core Ryzen CPU, and an RTX GPU. We'll get into the full specs in a second. But as you can see, this thing is decked out with an RGB backlit keyboard. We've got a number pad, giant trackpad, and there's actually an RGB strip right on the front. To tell you the truth, I probably could have lived without the RGB, but I do think it looks really good. And when you set it up with the Aurora Sync wallpapers, I think it really sets this thing off. So taking a look at the I/O on this unit, over here on the left-hand side, we have two USB 3.2 ports and a 3.5mm audio jack. Moving around to the right-hand side, there's not much going on here, but when we move around to the back, this is where the magic happens. We have another USB 3.2 port, a full-function USB Type-C 3.2 port, Gigabit Ethernet port. I was really hoping that this was 2.5, but on the spec sheet it states that it's only gigabit. And back here, we also have our power input. By the way, this comes included with a 240 watt power supply. So like I mentioned, I've been using this as my main PC for the past week, and I haven't run into anything that it won't handle. I do a lot of gaming, high-end emulation, and video editing on this unit. And these don't come in cheap. Unfortunately, this is only a loaner unit from Micro Center and AMD. So this video is sponsored by AMD and Micro Center. I want to give them both a big shout out, and if you're not familiar with Micro Center and you're a tech enthusiast, then you really should be. They have real brick and mortar stores that you can walk into and put your hands on the product before you purchase it. They've got stores in California, Colorado, Georgia, Illinois, Kansas, Massachusetts, Maryland, Michigan, Minnesota, Missouri, New Jersey, New York, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Texas, and Virginia. So if you're interested in checking them out, I will leave a link to their website in the description. So when it comes to the specs on this unit, for the CPU, we have the Ryzen 9 5900HX, 8 cores, 16 threads, base clock of 3.3, and a boost up to 4.6. Normally, this is a 45 watt part. But in this unit here, in performance mode, I've actually seen it go up to 70 watts, and the CPU performance is absolutely amazing. When it comes to the GPU, we have the NVIDIA RTX 3070. This is a laptop variant, but we still get 8 GB of GDDR6. We've got a 17.3 inch 165 Hz IPS display with an anti-glare coating. I personally think this display looks really good. Lots of color profiles that you can choose from. Dual 4-watt stereo speakers with Dolby Atmos, Wi-Fi 6, Bluetooth 5.2, and this came pre-installed with Windows 10, but I think some will be shipping with Windows 11. So in this video, we're obviously going to be testing out some PC games. I also want to throw some high-end emulation at this machine. We'll run some benchmarks, but first let's go ahead and jump into the operating system and just take a look at everything. Alright, so here we are. Like I mentioned, I'm running Windows 10 here. When I started everything up, it gave me the option to upgrade to Windows 11, but I just kept it with 10. Now, when it comes to bloat, this does have Norton pre-installed, something that I totally wiped, when I got everything up and running. Another really cool feature, and this is built into most of the ROG laptops, is their little performance tweaker. So from here, we've got silent, we've got performance, and turbo. Through everything you're going to see in this video, we're going to be set in turbo mode. This just gives us a little better TDP on that CPU, better fan curve, and it actually does a little bit of GPU overclocking on that RTX 3060. Overall user experience, very snappy. We've got that 1TB M.2 SSD. I mean, everything loads up really quickly, and I kind of expected it to with that Ryzen 9 5900HX. I've tested this in a smaller mini PC in the past, and it's a great CPU at around 45 watts, but to get the most out of it, they've definitely pushed it in this laptop. In some instances, when we're stressing out all 8 cores and 16 threads on this, I've seen the TDP jump up to 70 watts. And for a mobile chip, it's definitely pushing it, but the built-in cooler they're using here can handle it just fine. So the first thing I always like to do is run some benchmarks, and first up we have Geekbench 5, single core 1466, multi 8449. Looking really good on the single and multi, and I've expected it out of this CPU. Next up, 3D Mark Firestrike with a total score of 23,380. And finally, Time Spy with a 10,288. So yeah, when it comes to these benchmarks, definitely looking like a pretty powerful system, but let's go ahead and see how this thing can really game. Usually I just plug into a game capture device, but the screen on this looks so good I figured I'd just go ahead and film it. And first up, we have Halo Infinite, 1440p, ultra settings, looking really good here. I got an average of 75 FPS out of this game. Totally playable at 1440p, and when it comes down to it, I mean, if you need any more out of it, you can always drop it down to 1080. Next on the list, Forza Horizon 5, one of my favorite games, 1440p, ultra settings. I did try extreme, and every once in a while I saw it dip down to around 58. I mean, it's definitely possible to play it like that without a frame counter on screen, so you're really not noticing it. But I'd say ultra at 1440 is the way to go. Looking really good here, and we got an average of 84 FPS. No problem at all running Mortal Kombat 11 at 1440p, maxed out settings. I didn't see it drop below 60. You know, we've got it locked at 60 because it's a fighting game and it'll run like this all day. Here's Borderlands 3, and this one with all ultra settings actually gave me a few hiccups here and there, so I figured I'd go ahead and drop shadows down to high and a couple other settings. So 1440p with an ultra high mix, we got an average of 85 FPS. I also wanted to see how well this would handle Red Dead Redemption 2, so here we are at 1440p Ultra. I just ran the built-in benchmark, and we averaged 75 FPS. And the final PC game I wanted to test here was God of War. We're at 1440p Ultra settings, and I turned DLSS to quality. Still looks absolutely amazing, and we got an average of 68 FPS. I thought with quality setup on DLSS we'd get a bit more out of it, but we are at 1440p. This is one of the newest games on the list here, but you know, I don't mind playing it like this at all. It's still an incredible experience on PC. Now it's time to jump into some emulation, and first on the list we have PS2 using PCSX2. OpenGL backend, 1440p. We could go to 4K with this, but we've got a 2K screen here. It's just really not going to make much of a difference. If you wanted to go HDMI out to a 4K display, you can run these games at 4K, no problem at all on a system like this. Next on the list, we have some original Xbox emulation at 1440p. I'm using CXBX Reloaded, and I've got it upscaled to 2K. It looks absolutely amazing, and we're at a constant 60 with this one. When it comes to Xbox 360 emulation using Xenia, Red Dead is just one of those games that's really hard to run, especially with an unlocked frame rate. Now this will do 30 really well, no problem at all, but trying to go up to 60 at least in towns, it's just not going to cut it with the 5900HX. It really comes down to that CPU. And finally, at least for this video, we have some PS3 using RPCS3, upscaled to 1440p, using the Vulkan backend, Skate 3 running really smooth at 60. And like I mentioned, if you take a look at that CPU wattage in Afterburner up in the top left hand corner, we're close to 70 watts. And with the RPCS3 emulator, there's a few games that really love those cores and threads. That's why we're pulling so much wattage, and Skate 3 is definitely one of those games. So while running all of my tests, I always monitor CPU temps, and at idle we're around 36 degrees Celsius. On average, gaming and emulation, everything you saw tested in here, we had an average of 76 degrees Celsius. And the maximum that this hit while running Cinebench R23 for 10 minutes was 90. So it did thermal throttle. And you know, maxing out all 8 cores and 16 threads at about 60 watts with that would definitely do it in a laptop. But yeah, I mean, for everyday use, never saw any kind of throttling with it. This laptop has a 90 watt hour battery, and when you're going with a gaming laptop like this, in gaming mode, you're not going to get much out of it, but you can set the TDP on this CPU pretty low, down to 8 watts. And without using the RTX 3060, just relying on the internal Radeon 8 graphics, you can get around 9 hours of battery life out of it with the screen set at 50%. At 15 watts, you can expect around 6, but in turbo mode, I mean just ready to game, you're going to get about 1 hour of battery life out of this unit. It pulls a lot of wattage with that RTX 3070 and that 5900HX, and that's just how it goes. But overall, I've had a really good experience with the ROG Strix G17. I've been using this as my main PC, and to tell you the truth, I mean, I could probably get rid of everything and just use this. I'm not going to do it because I personally love a desktop, but this is a very powerful unit on the CPU side of things and the GPU side of things. I mean, you saw what we were running in this. It'll basically do anything at 1440p ultra settings, and for a gaming laptop, I think it's putting out some really good performance. So like I mentioned, this video is sponsored by Micro Center, and I want to give them another big shout out. And if you're a new customer, they actually have a coupon right now over on their website. I'll leave a link for it in the description. You're going to sign up with your email and name, and they're going to send you a coupon for a free in-store 128GB USB 3.1 flash drive and a free 128GB micro SD card. So if you're interested in picking these free items up, link for this is down below. But that's going to wrap it up for this video. Really appreciate you watching. If there's anything else you want to see running on this laptop, or if you have any questions, definitely let me know in the comments below. And if you're interested in learning more, I'm going to leave a few links to Micro Center's website in the description. But like always, thanks for watching.